Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and thank you so much for clicking on today's video. I really thought that the story was very funny and I hope you like it. If you do like it, please give this video a like. I've been working at my place of work for almost 2 years now. In all that time, I haven't really had any issues. I've kept my head down and done my job. Last July, I had to have surgery on my back that left me using a cane and unable to lift anything heavier than a gallon of milk. I need a second surgery, but for now, I'm super restricted in what I can and can't do. I've been having a little mini war against one of the breakfast attendants at my property because she wants me to set out the coffee creamer super early, and I refuse to unless guests are actually coming downstairs, as guests getting curdled cream in the coffee is something that happens frequently because they set out for too long and it spoils. This same breakfast attendant also wants me to set up the cereal, set out these super heavy wooden containers. These hold glass containers with our jelly, sugar, oatmeal toppings, etc. And set out everything except for the hot food, which is supposed to be done at 6 or 7 in addition to the coffee. Essentially, she wants me to do 90% of her job. For a while after my surgery, I pushed myself to make sure that everything was done as she had asked, because I didn't want to rock the boat, even though I was directly going against my surgeon's instructions. So I had to talk with my manager and all of the breakfast attendants and explain that I couldn't do everything I had been doing, as I was directly contributing to my back issues, and the longer I did those, the worse it got. Everyone else was alright with this and completely understood. However, not that bee. Every morning she works, she scolds me like an errant child about not setting everything out for her. Every morning, I remind her that I'm literally under medical restrictions and cannot do those things. Today she was working and again started complaining. But she took it a step further by complaining to my direct manager. I spoke to the general manager about my restrictions, as at that time I didn't have a direct supervisor. I got a message earlier from my direct manager saying she wants to speak to me tonight when I come in, but she didn't say about what. Not even a minute later, the girl covering the desk right now messaged me to let me know that the breakfast bee was talking all kinds of stuff to the manager right before I got the message about her needing to talk to me. I am so sick of this. It's literally her job as a breakfast attendant to do this stuff. Unless she's going to contribute to my medical bills that are going to continue to grow the more I push myself to do things like this, she can shut up. Any idea on what I should do to help in this situation that I'm maybe not seeing? I've talked to her several times and I'm just not getting through to her. OP then updates. I arrived on my shift to an email from my direct manager. I will put it below. Please tell me if this is okay. Do I need to add more to get my point across? The direct manager. Hi OP. If you will please set the dry breakfast items out and lock the milk in the morning for the company and coffee. Me. Hey direct manager. I have only not set out the coffee once since I have been back, and I have talked to the breakfast attendant about this issue several times. The only thing not done to her standards was the coffee creamer, which I don't set out until guests start coming down. I will continue to do it this way as guests don't like warm or curdled cream in their coffee. I didn't realize that Company X was in-house last night and did not set out the cereal. I'll make sure that this is done each morning that I'm here. However, I'm unable to carry the heavy wooden blocks with the dry goods as per my surgeon's request. I will do all that I'm able to do as best as I can, as I usually do, but I cannot in good conscience put my back at risk for further injury by carrying things too heavy for me. Please let me know if this will be an issue. Thanks in advance. And then Opie goes on to say, I arrived at my shift tonight to this email waiting from the direct manager. Thank you for helping me out, OP. Please continue doing what you and the breakfast attendant have agreed to do, and if you even think you may have a problem with carrying things, don't do it. We will manage and figure something else out. I've printed off the emails and will continue to build up evidence that they're violating ADA rules. Until then, this is pretty anticlimactic, but I'm about to throw some mad petty revenge at this breakfast bee. In the first update, I thought that the situation was done for now, as the direct manager told me to do what I can, and they, the breakfast attendant and management, will figure out the rest. I wasn't super happy with it, but figured whatever, this should be the end of it. But I also decided that I was done doing extras for this breakfast bee. See, she loves to complain, but conveniently forgets that I have been going above and beyond for her and keeping my mouth shut to management about sketchy stuff she does. She has a bad habit of bringing one of her grandkids to the hotel and having me give her keys to an empty room for the kid to sleep in, without management's approval, of course, because apparently that stuff's beneath her. She will also call around the time she's supposed to be here and tell me to clock her in. In the past, I just did it. I've since learned that that stuff's very illegal, so even if we weren't in this situation, I would have stopped, but the timing is just convenient. One of her biggest things is she wants me to open both the kitchen doors as soon as I get here, so that by the time she gets there, it will be a normal temperature. With 2 refrigerators and 2 freezers, it's hot as hell in there. So yesterday I made sure that that stuff stayed shut. So breakfast bee rolls up at around 5:30 and immediately starts yelling across the lobby about how I need to make sure that those doors are open or she will be too hot. Boo-hoo. I just looked at her. I didn't say anything, I just stared at her like she was suddenly speaking Hebrew. And me without my pocket translator. Today, I arrived to an email from the general manager telling me to make sure to open those doors because otherwise the freezers would overheat and the food won't be as cold. Now, if this has ever been mentioned before, I wouldn't be upset, but this is obviously her way of trying to keep the peace between me and Breakfast Bee. But as they have recently talked to me about taking a management track position, I think it may be a test. So I just sent a reply back to the email telling her I would make sure everything was done and I'm now trying to plot my petty revenge. I will be opening the doors to the kitchen today, but not until 4:50, so it will still be hot in there. I'm also eagerly waiting for the breakfast bee to either call to try to get me to clock her in or bring her grandkid up here so that I can tell her no. And then OP edited. I've decided not to be petty about this. If I want to be management someday, I can't pull stuff like that and think that I'm good management material. However, I do believe that the best revenge will be to live well and show her that no matter what she throws at me, I will not allow myself to get sucked into her games and jeopardize my future for someone that in 10 years isn't going to matter to me. When I do make manager though, I'll make sure to write her up for any and all sketchy stuff that I catch her doing. In the meantime, any advice on how to be the most professional I can be about the situation? Oh my goodness, this stuff has gone on way longer than necessary. Last week, stuff kind of hit the fan before I even left my shift, so I wanted to wait until I was back on this week to update so that I would know the repercussions of what happened. So when we left off last, I had decided to take the moral high road and comply with as much of the stuff that the lazy breakfast bee threw at me. I had been told I was on track for management training and down the road a promotion, and there was no way I was going to let this bee ruin that chance for me. Was it frustrating that she was making such a big deal over things I'm having a hard time doing? Yes, but at the end of the day, I was just going to deal with it until I got promoted and then write her up for all the stuff. Not stuff that she had done in the past. She just does as she pleases and gets no repercussions, so I know I would have plenty to write up in the future. This lasted until about the time the breakfast bee strolled in the doors. See, the night I had done everything I could, but I still forgot to open the kitchen doors, so the kitchen would be cooler when she came in. She walks in the door and I'm talking to one of our long-term stay guests. Seriously, dude has a reservation for 300 nights with us this time around. He's really chill and likes to come down and talk with me in the mornings. He goes to talk to her by the kitchen door, and she starts talking of wish she would have opened the door in the snarkiest tone imaginable. Now, while I don't like her talking bad about me, to begin with, I thought it was super unprofessional that she pulled this in front of one of our best customers. I'm kinda pissed, but whatever. I'm just trying to make it to the end of my shift so that I can rant at my poor husband, who is super done with hearing about this, by the way. I let it roll off and don't say anything. She goes into the kitchen and is slamming cookware and silverware all over the place, coming out into the breakfast area and throwing things onto the counter. We had guests sitting right next to where she was doing this. It got so bad that one of our other long-term stay guests asked if she was all right. I told them she was fine and seemed to calm down, but strike 2B. Things were quiet for a while, for about 20 minutes, and then I can hear her talking on her phone about me. This woman waited until breakfast started and called someone to complain about how little I do and how we wouldn't have had any problems if I would just do my job. I'm fine with letting people rant, but if I could hear her from the front desk, then the lobby full of people down for breakfast sure could as well. So now I'm far beyond pissed. It's one thing to talk bad, it's another to be so unprofessional and to try to quote-unquote call me out in front of multiple guests. As luck would have it, my direct supervisor was working the next shift, so when she got to work, I immediately pulled her into her office for a little talk. I laid it all on the table. I told her that I had been doing my best with the breakfast setup that I could, but I could no longer continue to put my health at risk by going directly against the wishes of my surgeon. I told her about the breakfast bee's actions of that morning and how upset I was that not only was this woman complaining about me to co-workers, but now to guests as well. I finished it up by saying that this was the last straw, that I was tired of begging management to do something and that the next time something like this happened, I would go above our GM's head and start taking this up with corporate HR. It's amazing how quickly management's tone changed. They know they're already on some thin ice with me about some sketchy stuff they pulled after my surgery, and that I'm down to throw them under the bus for their actions in a heartbeat. I was told that I no longer had to help with breakfast setup if I didn't feel up to it, and that if the breakfast bee says anything else, that they will take care of it. Breakfast bee came in just now and is avoiding looking at me directly and hasn't said anything to me for a while, which frankly is how I prefer it. She's throwing stuff around, but whatever. I fully plan on going to corporate if she does one more thing. Management has already proven to me that I can't trust them to have my back on this issue. So when I last wrote, management had changed their tune and told Breakfast Bee to cut that stuff out. For the most part, she has, but it's been about a week and she's already ramping back up to her antics. Last week, the day after management told her to chill out, Breakfast Bee comes to me with a receipt for our local mega chain superstore and tells me that I need to fill out an expense report form for her, as she's super busy. I've been here 2 years and have never had to do this before, but assumed that since she used corporate card to pick up some fruit for breakfast, that this was just standard procedure. Nope. Literally, all you have to do is write down what you bought with the card, the total cost with tax, and sign the thing. Yesterday, she does the same. I look at her like she's stupid, write orange and bananas on the paper, and slide that stuff right back to her. I know she's just pulling some kind of power tripping stuff, and I'm not going to blow up on her, no matter how much I want to. Yesterday morning, she calls at around 5 saying that she's going to be late and that she needs me to start the hot food for her. No big deal, it's legit just microwaving. I end up having all the hot food done and set out, and she ends up being only 5 minutes late. I had assumed that she would be at least 30 minutes late because otherwise why would she need breakfast started? Today, she did the same thing. Called at around 5 saying she needs breakfast started because she overslept and if I could put the hot food out for her again. I don't do anything. I plan on starting the hot food 5 minutes past when she's supposed to get to work. She arrives only 3 minutes late. She doesn't actually need help. She's just trying to get me to do more of her work now, and management told me that I would no longer be doing all the extra work that I had been doing before she decided to start being so demanding. She came over to me just now telling me how she's so sorry that I don't like her and how she will never ask me to help her with anything again. Yeah, right. But she needs me to make sure the coffee creamer is out. This creamer is what started this whole thing, and I refuse to put it out before people come down in the morning. She may not realize that I am not in fact stupid, but if she wants to play the bee games with me, I will personally deliver those bee prizes. She can postulate and power trip all she wants. I'm not falling for it, and I'm sure as hell not giving in. Oh my glop, guys. Last week we left off, Breakfast Bee has been postulating and power tripping her way through the mornings, trying to sneakily get me to do more of her work, hoping that maybe if she does it slowly enough, I may not notice. I may have the tiny arms of a T-Rex, but I assure you, my mind is just fine. So this whole week she comes in late. The first day, it was just a few minutes late, then more and more, etc. Today, which is Friday, she's a whole 45 minutes late. Now, I know that she is only this late as she wants me to have to set out breakfast, or at least most of it before she gets here in the mornings. The first few days have kind of blown up in her face because I did nothing and made her to have to hustle to make it on time. Oh, but she got me good today. She was so late that unless I started, breakfast would have been late for the guests. Of course, today was one of those mornings that people started queuing up about 15 minutes before breakfast is supposed to start. So I'm hobbling little old me as fast as I can, trying to get at least some of the food stat out for the guests that are obviously in a hurry to get going because, breakfast was now supposed to have been started 15 minutes ago. I finally managed to get the breakfast out and in strolls the bee. Seriously, I think this woman got here and sat in her car watching me to set everything out, which you can clearly see from the parking lot, and right as I bring out the last thing, she walks in the door. If I hadn't seen the headlights pull in 10 minutes before and hadn't known that no one had come into the hotel, I may have just believed that this was a coincidence. This let me know two things. Breakfast Bee knows that I am not willing to let the guests suffer for our petty stuff, and I will do breakfast when I absolutely have to, even though it physically hurts me like crazy. And that she knows that I can't complain about this because she's phrasing this as she overslept. Normally, this would kind of piss me off. Well, let's be honest, I would be seething, throwing tables kind of mad. But today, I'm not. I'm not mad because I know something that Breakfast Bee doesn't know. My promotion paperwork has started. I started training for my management positions yesterday, and I've been given more administrative roles working with the current management team and front office staff. Breakfast Bee can preen and postulate and pull all the stuff she wants for now. I'm giving her the rope that she's going to hang herself with, and I will be sitting front row with popcorn and a giant margarita. For now, I'm going to go home and enjoy a long, well-deserved bout of a day drinking. Last week, we left off with Breakfast Bee was postulating and power tripping all over the place and came in something like 45 minutes late, making me do her job completely. I was unable to prove that she sat in her car and watched me set everything out, but I know that she did it. Today, my GM came in at around 5 a.m. and had a meeting with myself and Breakfast Bee to try to put an end to this animosity. Wouldn't you know that as soon as she was confronted with the situation, Breakfast Bee backpedaled like a crazy person. It was all, "Oh, I don't have any issues with OP, she has an issue with me," or "I didn't know we were supposed to be doing things this way. OP has just always done it that way and I don't understand why she would stop doing these things for me." Breakfast Bee even tried to say that I was making stuff up. She told the GM that she, Breakfast Bee, has never talked about me to or in front of a guest. Then in the next sentence, she says that long-term guests had just happened to be next to her when she said something about me. Man, whatever. I'm going to play nice for now, and I'm honestly considering just looking for a new job. This is not the first issue they haven't had my back on, and management continues to disregard my health and surgeon's request. Haven't decided just yet, but I might apply for other jobs just to see what's out there. So, we left off with Breakfast Bee was denying up and down and all around that she had done absolutely nothing wrong, and that she was just a poor, confused old lady who didn't understand why OP stopped helping her. Or more like, doing her job. At the end of the meeting, I was pretty steamed because it seemed like nothing was being resolved, and I was just going to have to put up with all this or find another job. Well, the next morning GM pulls me into the office alone and tells me that she has thought about it and decided to change the standards of what front desk does to help with breakfast, just so that there's no confusion. When this started, I was making 1 container of coffee, 1 decaf, and 1 hot water in addition to setting out everything but the hot food. Now the official rule is that I just make 1 pot of coffee and cream only goes out if there's people in the lobby. I no longer set anything out for breakfast. I don't even turn on the juice machine. But not only that, now no one is allowed to set up breakfast for the breakfast staff. Meaning that unless you're a breakfast attendant, you have no business setting up the breakfast area. If the attendant is going to be late, then so is breakfast. I have won not only this battle, but the whole war. The saga is over and Breakfast Bee has been defeated. You all have been amazing with the support and interest. It warms my cold heart. Tis I, the Frenchiest Fry here to update you all lovely peeps on the aftermath of the Breakfast Bee saga. In my last post, I had a lot of comments kind of taking bets on how Breakfast Bee would handle the transition from having everything done for her to no longer having any help from any of the front desk staff. So I thought I would wait a bit and give you all the official answer. Actually, it's been really great this past month. After management changed the standards of what help was expected from the front desk staff, Breakfast Bee no longer had a leg to stand on and had to deal with the fact that all I was going to do for her was set out one pot of coffee in the mornings. She did try to start up all this stuff again by being super late twice. Once a few days after the verdict had been handed out and once last week. The first time she called and said she was running late and heavily implied, whilst not actually asking me to do anything, that I should get the breakfast started for her. Imagine her surprise when all I had done was set out the single pot of coffee and inform the guests that the breakfast would be late today. Oh boy, was she pissed. She slammed things around and muttered under her breath, but I had my phone out and ready to start recording her the second she got further out of line, so she didn't do more than that. The second time she didn't call, she was just late, hoping that if she was late enough, I would just get started on my own. Instead of doing her work for her, I called my GM and told her that Breakfast Bee was super late and hadn't called, so we needed to call someone else in to cover her shift. Since it was such short notice, GM was the one who had to cover for breakfast that morning. The look on Breakfast Bee's face when she sauntered in an hour late to find a very pissed off GM running and setting things up for breakfast was honestly to date one of the best things I've ever seen in person. I will go to my grave with that image as a cherished memory. There was also the day that Breakfast Bee was pulled into the office and after much yelling, was told that if she's having trouble showing up on time to do her job, she won't have one anymore. Whispers went wild for a few days before I got confirmation that Breakfast Bee had her final warning. She will be given no more chances, and if she steps out of line again, she will be fired and will lose out on her retirement benefits she's been building up on with our company. Now, normally I wouldn't have put any stock into my GM saying this because she does have a tendency to bury her head in the sand and not actually handle problems with staff here. But this last month, she has really stepped up her game and fired several people that honestly should have been let go a long time ago. So this is it for now. Breakfast Bee has had the fear of God put into her and has stopped her stuff for now. But I expect that sometimes in the not so distant future, I will be back with the joyous news that Breakfast Bee has been fired. When we left off in my last post, our GM had come in at the crack of dawn to cover for Breakfast Bee because she thought that she would be cute and come in an hour late and make me set up breakfast for her. Instead of that, I set out one pot of coffee and called the GM to let her know that someone needed to cover Breakfast Bee because she wasn't in yet and wasn't answering her phone. GM covered and told Breakfast Bee that if she can't get her stuff together and do her job, then she shouldn't have a job anymore. It's been a month since, and things have been really good. No more being late, no more last-minute call-outs, and she's been doing all of her own work without complaint. Until today. So, Breakfast Bee was supposed to get here at around 5 a.m., but she usually doesn't roll in until 5:15 or 5:30. So I didn't even think about the fact that she was late until 5:45 hit, because breakfast is at 6 and still no one is here to do breakfast. I call Breakfast Bee's cell, no one answers. I call back again and this time the call goes straight to voicemail. Knowing that this is her usual tactic of getting others, or me, to do her work for her, I call our manager. I tell manager that Breakfast Bee isn't answering her phone and that breakfast is now late. I also ask if she would like me to go get breakfast started until we can get someone in, and she tells me no, that she will call in the backup and that I should stay at the desk. At 6:20, Breakfast Bee finally calls and says that she quote-unquote overslept and that quote-unquote her phone was dead. I want to put it in the notes that things like this happen, and I know I've done these things before, but I just don't believe her in this instant. So she wanted me to get everything started and she would be right in. I go to, gleefully if I'm being honest, tell her that there's no need to come in. We already called in Awesome Breakfast Lady so that she could stay home today. She got kind of huffy with me and asked if I even called our manager before calling in Awesome Breakfast Lady, or if I just did it myself because I didn't want to have to do any of her work. I told her that I called her 4 times before calling to ask the manager what she wanted me to do, and guess what? She wanted me to stay at my desk doing my job and call in Awesome Breakfast Lady to come and cook breakfast because that is her job. I could hear the CBF over the phone, but she couldn't say anything because I did everything exactly as I was supposed to do. So guys, what did you think about the story? Honestly, it kind of boiled my blood at the very beginning, just because I felt like Breakfast Bee was really taking advantage of OP. Anyhow, the last update was posted around 3 years ago, so it's unlikely that we'll hear more. Anyway, again, thank you so much for clicking on today's video. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you're looking for more stories from Reddit with cool updates, please subscribe.